I tried to do is I tried to say, well, okay, at the bottom, we know that there are a whole bunch of protocols out there in the world today. And it's going to be very important to interoperate across those protocols. And some protocols are better at building applications, so you might put Hyperledger Fabric or Corda, no, not Corda. You certainly put Fabric. You might even put Ethereum in the general applications bucket, where this is really good at building applications. And then in the middle, you've got those protocols which are really good at digital assets, payments, basically. So I would put Stellar in there. You could put Corda in there, maybe, though Richard Brown wasn't very happy when I did that. I know Richard, he's the CTO of Corda, and he argued that Corda really was more of a all-singing protocol. And then you've got the cross-chain stuff, and this is where we start looking at, I think, Polkadot, which I think is very interesting as you start to create composable businesses. So you think of that value chain that I showed you before. Well, what happens if the components I need are on different protocols or on different networks? I could create a composable business here on my platform as I bring together different components, stick them together and have an end-to-end solution. And also the interoperability of data. So I think all that cross-chain stuff becomes really important. And at that level, you have the platform token, which is there to effectively reward the provision of the technical platform upon which you're building your applications. As we go to the next level, this is where we're building networks which sit on these platforms. And of course, the network is phenomenally important. This is who is in the room, who is providing data, who is transacting. And those networks, as we know, are being built up on an industry basis. So we have insurance ones, healthcare ones, industrial ones, consumer, energy, etc. It may be that we start to get cross-industry networks where we start to see the boundaries between networks blur. Now, I had becomes around creating something monolithic. And of course, going back to the comments I made before, we're looking really to have loosely coupled components, so we need to be a little bit careful about how ambitious we get in terms of thinking about these networks. But at this level, the network, the organization, well, on a private network, we have, 5, 10, 15 companies sitting around a table, and that's how we manage the organization. But that doesn't scale, and that doesn't really work in my thinking for this token economy where we have a very decentralized perspective. So I think we're going to start seeing more of these autonomous organizations. And you then start saying, well, how am I going to govern an autonomous organization? I can't have people sitting around a table anymore. So this is where that utility token I talked about before really starts to come in, and we start seeing on-chain governance where we're using that token for staking, we're using that token for governing, for decision making. We're using that token to drive behavior of the business network. We talked about airdrops, for example. The governing or the rules, yes. So the originators of this network, and this is where this centralized versus decentralized becomes interesting. Could airdrop tokens, for example, to encourage people to join these networks? So I think the utility token becomes phenomenally important at the level of the network, but also it becomes very important at the level of the application. And I think what's important to understand is the business model exists at the platform level, it exists at the network level, and it exists at the application level. And we could be having individual business models for each application. And again, I think the utility token becomes phenomenally important in those business models. Think about tokenization of energy, or think about minerals provenance. if you're trying to change behavior, it's going to be very helpful to have that utility token. If I think about one that was done in Canada, the energy space, where we have folks who have solar panels on their roof, they have an electric car on their drive, and we have a bank in this network. And you start trading peer-to-peer, neighbor to neighbor within the network, and you get paid. You get paid in this utility token. And what I love was the very first transaction on this network in Canada. It's called I, who sold his excess power to his neighbor, or her neighbor, sorry, and got some tokens. They used those to buy a pizza. And the reason I love that is because I think the first transaction on Bitcoin was also a pizza. So, the world of tokenomics revolves around pizza. So that's kind of a sort of a big footprint as to how this thing might build out, recognizing we have to balance between getting too monolithic and wanting to be quite composable and componentized in our architecture. But the token, and this is my point, and particularly the utility token, becomes very helpful to drive business models at each level in this three-layer stack. What I've tried to do